Hey, what's up everyone? Adam here with brahwegotthis, and today I'm going to explain trials or raids in ESO catered to players that have never done them before. Trials are a 12-person activity in the endgame that you could say is the pinnacle of the endgame for ESO. If you are familiar with raids in other games, these are activities that have some of the hardest challenges, most mechanics, and take great teamwork to complete. So my goal in this video is to explain to newer players what all goes into trials, the levels required, basic strategies, and other information regarding rewards and such. So if you're new to the trial scene and are confused, let's go ahead and help you out. Before we get started, I do want to mention that if you want to watch me play live, I stream on twitch.tv/brahwegotthis every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to join my Discord or guild, the Brahwegotthis or Necrodaddies, all those links will be in the description, as well as the Twitch one that will be in the description as well. If you want to follow me on social media, you can on Instagram and Twitter. The links in the description are there for that as well, but let's go ahead and get into the video. Like I said, I want to try and cover trials in a way that is overarching. For instance, I won't be going into every specific detail of every trial. This video would be 200 hours long if I did that, so I will be making separate videos for each trial, but I want to cover things that I think apply to all of them when you start running them for the first time. First off, let's talk about how many trials there are in different versions of the trials. There are 3 trials in the base game. They are in Craglorn. So the base game trials are Helross Citadel, Aetherian Archive, and Sanctum Ophidia. The DLC or expansion trials are Maw of Lorcage, Asylum Sanctorium, Halls of Fabrication, Sunspire, Cloudrest, and About to be Kind's Aegis with Greymoor. There are 2 versions of each trial, a normal one and a veteran one, just like dungeons. Inside the veteran ones, there are hard modes on them, just like dungeons as well, have hard modes on the veteran difficulty. Also, to switch from doing normal trials to veteran trials, you go to the group icon and click the shield looking one with the veteran markings on it. That will switch you to the vet version for you. We're going to go more into this later in the video, but another thing is with certain trials in expansion or DLC zones, you may see people saying that they are doing blank trial like Cloudrest on +1, +2, or +3 difficulty. So let me give you an example of what these numbers mean. The higher the number basically means harder trials, and here's why. If you want to run normal Cloudrest trial, which is in Somerset, there are 3 mini bosses and the last boss in this trial, so a total of 4 bosses. However, you don't have to kill any of the mini bosses. If you choose, you can go straight to the final boss and kill him. If you do this, however, you'll be running the trial on +3. All the mini bosses will be incorporated in the final boss fight. This is true for +2 and +1. +2 means you kill 1 mini boss before the final boss. +1 means you killed 2 mini bosses before the final boss, and so on. Now, these are able to be done on normal and on veteran difficulty. When you do these on the plus difficulties, you can also get better rewards and more rewards as well. And we're going to go into the rewards a little later in the video, but again, you can get to these trials, if you do not know how, by teleporting to a party member that's already inside, or you can TP to the trial directly on the map by clicking on it and teleporting to it. I do want to mention that if you want to pug trials or do trials with random people in the game, go to Craglorn. This is where everyone types in the chat and does them with random people. This is kind of like the universal zone to do them in. Now let's go over the roles in trials. Now I know that if we have any veterans watching this, you may say you only need 1 tank or what have you for certain normal trials, but I'm going to speak at this as a whole. So typically for normal and veteran trials, you will run 8 DPS, 2 healers, and 2 tanks. 1 tank is a main tank, the other is the off tank. Now the difference between the main tank and the off tank is a few things. As the name says, the main tank is usually the designated person to aggro the main boss for the fight. Now in trials or raids, more than just the boss will spawn usually, so there are other mechanics that need to be dealt with. So what the off tank does is alleviates some of the pressure from the main tank. So the off tank will tank maybe some mobs if it gets out of control. The off tank is sort of an overflow area per se for the main tank. So when the main tank needs help, the off tank will take some of the pressure off. However, there are some fights and trials where you have two bosses that both need to be tanked, so the off tank will have to take one of them. There will also be mechanics where one group has to split with one tank and the others have to split with the off tank. It is different in each trial, but for the most part, think of the main tank as the leader of the trial or the one who controls the fight, and the off tank is sort of the auxiliary to help alleviate pressure or mechanics from the main tank. When starting out tanking, try being the off tank first and maybe learn from a main tank the mechanics of the dungeon based off of which one it is until you feel comfortable to give it a try. Now for the two healers, it's pretty simple. It's honestly just a ratio thing. 2 healers is enough to cover 2 teams of 5 in trials. You really don't need any more designated healer roles due to the DPS that you need to be doing. Then with the 8 DPS, they're obviously important because if you don't do damage, you can't clear the trial, especially vet trials. You will need to be pulling certain amounts of DPS to clear these as a group. Now, when it comes to magicka and stamina split of DPS roles, this doesn't really matter in normal trials. For instance, you could have all magicka necromancers if you wanted, but for the vet trials, you get into some more interesting things. For the most part, I think it's best to communicate with the group that you run vet trials with to see what everyone's role is, because that will matter for tanks and healers. Say you have more stamina DPS than magicka, they may need to slot in certain skills to cater to this need. And I will say that there may be specific sets for DPS splits for top tier trial groups, but this is supposed to be an entry level guide, so I'm not going to worry you with that information. So since we're on the topic of roles, I want to continue off that and go over the importance of communication and group synergies. I don't really mean the synergies that are on the ground necessarily. I'm more talking about the armor and skills that you run. Now, in normal trials, some of these will be a little less catastrophic, but for veteran trials, it is essential. So I want to teach you a little bit about this now. So when you run normal trials, you'll be practicing this. First off, communication is key in these type of activities. You generally want to have one person who is the raid leader. That way they call out a lot of mechanics, but certain skills that you activate need to be called out too. For instance, let's take the skill Aggressive Warhorn from the PvP tree. This is something that almost all the tanks and healers will be running. This will boost the max magicka and stamina of all the players in the group, and it will also give increase to critical damage. So it is a very important skill, but they do not stack. So you can't have 4 people, your 2 healers and 2 tanks, use this all at once. It will only use one of them. So you cannot stack this skill. So it's important to say, hey, my Aggressive Warhorn is up, because really there should always be a horn active with 4 people generally running it, because you have 4 people, your ultimate's going to be generating, so you should be able to have one of these up a lot of the time. So it's crucial to communicate things like this. This goes for other skills in armor as well. There are some skills in armor that will not stack abilities for the group, so there's no need to run them on multiple characters. So this is something you need to talk over with your group some before running, and see what everyone is wearing and running. Now, again, this isn't that detrimental when it comes to normal trials. If you have people that know the trial and do decent DPS, you'll be fine. But for the vet trials, it is crucial to set up your team beforehand and get the most out of each player. So on the topic of roles, let's go into how you basically set up your team in the trial. The main tank will always draw aggro and try to face the boss to him or her if it's able to be drawn to them. Then the DPS will usually stack up or stand pretty close to the boss at the back of it, not where the tank's at. What this does is it allows healers to stand behind the mob of DPSs and hit all of them with the heals. If DPSs are running around rampant and are all over the place, this makes the healer's job very difficult. It's best a lot of times to stand as close as you can as DPSs so you can help your healers out. Now, there will be some mechanics, obviously, where you don't want to stand like that. That is a case-by-case basis and happens in every trial, but this is a baseline that you can follow with a lot of boss fights within trials. Make it easier for your teammates. Also, something to keep in mind is if you are a melee DPS or a range DPS. This matters for some mechanics. One example that I can think of is if you're in Cloud Rest on the final boss, he will spawn orbs that need to be killed. Typically, the range DPS need to focus these orbs and stand in place where they are at. That way, again, that the healer can heal them and the group collectively if they need to. The melee DPS need to stay DPSing the boss, though. This is something you just need to be aware of, that everyone will have places in the trials. Melee and ranged abilities do matter for some aspects of fights. Now, let's go into the level requirements for trials in ESO. Now, I'm going to say that to do normal trials, you need to at least be CP 160. The reason being is, first of all, If you are a tank and healer, you need to definitely have competent sets that will help with the trial. And at below CP 160, you haven't farmed for that set yet, probably because CP 160 is the gear cap level. For DPS, it's almost pointless to do these below CP 160 because 1, you're probably not doing enough damage, 2, you aren't even going to get the items dropped at the highest CP, and 3, it would just slow your team down. Now, if you are learning mechanics and whatnot, that's fine, obviously, but just try to wait until 160. Now, some people won't be able to do it at 160. It really depends on the skill level of the group, but I will say that it's definitely doable at that level, but chances are you will have higher levels with you probably, so you won't have to worry about clearing them for the most part. I would say that typically the base game Craglorn trials are the easiest trials to start out on if you wanted some direction with that. And you could always go to Craglorn for random trial groups. Like I said, for normal trials, it's usually not that hard to find a random trial group, and you can usually clear it for the most part without having much issues. Now with veteran trials, this is seriously dependent on knowledge of your rotation, competency in the trial as a team, and overall DPS of the team. Some people say you need to be at least 650 to 700 CP. I won't disagree with them on this. This will be tremendously helpful. But keep in mind, CP is just a number sometimes because, again, I've seen people that are CP 1000 or CP 800, and they are worse at the game than someone who is at CP 350. So you just have to keep that in mind. But the veteran versions of these trials aren't easy. You will need team coordination, knowledge of your rotation, really, really good knowledge of your rotation, high DPS, and a knowledge of the mechanics. This is something you will have to figure out if you're ready for trying these. We are actually in the process as a guild of doing vet trial progressions of the vet Craglorn trials, of where we teach people and go through the progressions of these veteran versions. This is the best way to learn and find your team chemistry. So again, for veteran trials, you've got to have great DPS, great knowledge of your rotation, and great knowledge of mechanics and good teamwork. So you guys have to kind of figure that out with your team and see if you're ready to do these. So the reward structure in trials are as follows. You will have a weekly trial quest inside the trial that you can do for a purple reward coffer once per week per character. Every time you complete the trial in that week, after you receive that coffer, the quest reward will only give you gold, but you will still get drops from the bosses. It doesn't matter if you complete this on normal or veteran, it's the same coffer. Also, like I said, you can do the trial as much as you want each week and receive the rewards from the bosses. On normal, however, you will receive blue and green pieces of armor, weapons, and jewelry. From the trials on veteran, you will receive purple jewelry, armor, weapons, and a guaranteed gold jewelry drop from the final boss. On veteran hard mode, you receive 2 gold jewelry pieces from the final boss. Also, for trials that have the +1, 2, and 3 mechanic, like I talked about before, the reward structure is a little different. On normal mode, in Cloud Rest, for example, you will get imperfect items. In veteran mode, you will get perfected items. Perfected items have an extra stat line which aren't going to make a massive difference, only for the people that want leaderboards or want to min-max. Now at +0 on veteran, you will only get perfected weapons at the final boss. At +1, you will get perfected weapons and body pieces. At +2, you will get perfected weapons, body pieces, and purple jewelry. And at +3, you will get all of that but gold jewelry instead. Like I said before, the higher plus number, the harder it is. I just wanted to mention that because I see a lot of people asking what perfected gear is. Well, that is what it is, and that is how you get it. Now, I'm not going to go into every trial's reward structure, but for the most part, it follows the structure that I just mentioned with the pluses and with the trials that do not have the plus versions. This will again be covered more in depth in a specific trial video. Also on veteran mode, you will have various achievements like no death achievements or speed runs like on veteran DLC dungeons and all that stuff. These can give you skins, titles, and other things. You can also get motif drops from veteran mode as well in the trial, which usually look pretty amazing or they sell for a decent amount. If you are farming gear, the normal trials are usually the best way to go just because they're easier to do and you can always improve your items. Now, some etiquette with rewards and trials is the same with dungeons. You can trade rewards with people in your group for the next 2 hours, and please try to trade your rewards at the end of the trial. It will cause less confusion and make the experience go smoother for everyone. And if you don't want to trade the items, just let people know. I feel like I see people get pressured into trading sometimes, and it's just like, make sure you state that you don't want to trade the item. It is yours and you don't have to give it away. Also, look out for chests in the trials. If you have someone who has the increased reward chance perk from the champion point trees, let them open the chests to increase the team's chances at better loot. Some final things I want to say about trials are this. Make sure to be patient with newer players in these. Not everyone is going to know everything at once. Join a voice chat. Our Discord is always open and you can join that. Make sure to take your time with them. Try and learn the mechanics within them. Have fun as well. These trials are very enjoyable experiences and can be the most rewarding activity in the game when you're finally figuring out how to clear a really hard mechanic with your team. It's such a cool feeling to be able to do that. Also, some skills that can be helpful for sure are aggressive Warhorn for healers and tanks. This comes from the PvP skill line. Like I said, these will be crucial for trials. Also for DPSs, if a mechanic needs a long range interrupt or needs you to stay in place to kill and add, Crushing Shock from the Destruction Staff line and Venom Arrow from the bow line are 2 ranged interrupts that you can use that can help. Also make sure to buff up with food as well. If you don't have buff food, you will die a lot. Make sure you have your food. And again, most importantly, make sure to have fun. Like I said, I'm not going to go into all the trials and details. I'm going to leave that up to specific videos here in the future so I can give those trials the time they need to explaining things. So make sure to stay tuned for when I do those trial guides. But remember, if you have any more questions, you can join our Discord and our guild. You can come by my Twitch channel Monday, Tuesday, Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and ask questions. You can leave comments as well, asking me questions, but all those links will be in the description below. Make sure to join those communities if you're confused or want people to play the game with. We have an amazing group of people there, so I look forward for you to join. Also, remember to follow me on social media, on Instagram and Twitter to stay up to date on everything I post in the channel, and make sure to like, subscribe, heavy attack that bell icon to be notified when I upload new content weekly. But thank you all again for your support, and make sure to stay tuned for future specific trial guides and other guides in ESO. Have faith, be great, and I'll see you guys on ESO.